Hello, my name is Doug Kaye, and I'm here with another one of my videos for the Arcanum. This video I'm calling Winners from Losers. Have you ever come home from a day of shooting with a lot of very disappointing images? So bad you think you've basically got nothing there? Well, it happens to all of us, happens to me a lot. And what I'm going to show you today is just an example of how you might take one of your losers and turn it into a winning shot just by playing with it. Sometimes there's a lot more potential in the images than you might think there is. Here are a number of images that I shot of the Blue Angels. One of the things I like to do is go out and do my best to try and capture fast-moving objects. In this case, airplanes flying directly from one side to the other at 400 plus miles an hour. These shots were taken from Alcatraz Island facing south towards San Francisco, so I was shooting into the sun. In the case of this image, I was shooting pretty much directly into the sun as the airplane flew overhead. And as you can see, there's not much there. We've got gray sky. We have an airplane that's a little bit darker, but still gray. We're in Lightroom, by the way, now. And what we're going to do is see if we can actually make something from nothing out of this image. Now, it's important to note that this image was shot in RAW format instead of JPEG. And one of the advantages of RAW is that the camera captures data that's quite a bit broader in range than what we can actually get into a JPEG image or even see on our screens. The dynamic range is much greater. That means there's far more highlight detail and far more shadow detail than you might think is there. And the same is true with colors. We actually can have quite a bit more color in the images than we can actually see at any one moment on the screen. Part of the process that we're going to do here in Lightroom is to take some of that color and dynamic range and squeeze it down into what we can actually see all at one time on the screen and in our images. If you look closely at this image, it's a little hard to see probably in the video, but there's a very slight hint of color. There's a little bit of yellow in some parts of the sky, maybe some greens, maybe some pink. You have to sort of know it's there. In this case, shooting into the sun was a big advantage for me. One of the things I do right away when I come into Lightroom with an image is I click on the auto button. And what that does is it brings all of those extended parts of the file somewhat into range. It brings the highlights down, it brings the shadows up if necessary, it brings the colors all within range so that at least you get a sense of what might be there even though you haven't seen it all yet. Now, you might think we could bring the color out by just increasing the saturation. Let's give it a try. Let's crank the saturation way up here to about, 35 or so. And you can see there's a little bit of a hint of color there. We've got some yellow showing, maybe a little bit of blue in the sky. But what we really want to do is we want to drive these colors apart. We want to increase the color contrast. That means wherever we find colors that differ, we want to increase the difference between the colors. And that's to some extent what the clarity and vibrance sliders do in Lightroom. So let's crank our clarity way up to 40 or so. Let's take our vibrance up to 59, 60. Now, these numbers don't really matter much. What's important is that you play with them. You can't necessarily do this on portraits, not of people that you want to continue to make look good. But when you have an abstract subject like this, you can play to your heart's content and do all sorts of crazy things. So we've cranked up the clarity, we've cranked up the vibrance. Let's bring the exposure down actually quite a bit, 2 stops or so, because when you bring the exposure down, one of the side effects is that you're actually increasing the saturation. Let's add some contrast here. Let's add a lot of contrast, in fact, to bring this out. Let's bring our highlights, our lightest parts of our images down a bit. Let's bring our shadows up. And let's take our white level. Let's see, let's bring that up quite a bit here and see what we get out of that. And let's take our blacks way down. Again, what's important here is get in there and experiment. Well, take a look at this. As you can see, we've pretty much made something out of nothing here. Let's take a look. Here's our before, and here's our after. Again, before, not much there. After, where did all that color come from? That color was actually in the image. It was in the file, and all we did was bring it out using Lightroom. Now, this isn't quite done. One of the things I don't like about is the big white area in the lower left doesn't really do anything for me. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the gradient tool in Lightroom. And I'm going to create a gradient that covers that white area. I can't really bring much color out there because in this case there really is no color, but at least I can make it not so bright white. And we'll just adjust exposure up here so it's not quite so obvious. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to crop this image. Let's just get rid of it that way. We're going to crop out some of that. We're going to crop out some from the upper right. And maybe move this over a bit. And yeah, it's centered. Center's maybe not the best position, but in this case it works for our composition. And there we go. Let's take a look again at before and after. Let's see what happens if we show you that way. Here we go. Before and after. And I think you'll agree we managed to make something from nothing. In fact, we made a winner from a loser. After about 5 minutes more work than what I've shown you here, I made an image that I entered into a competition here in Northern California, and it did very well. So now when you get back and you come home with some images that you think are worth just deleting, give it another thought and see if you can actually make some of your losers into winners. This is Doug Kaye. Thanks for watching.